Welcome to another session. I hope you are well. Today I am going to be speaking to the topic thinking things through, if I call it by a different set of words, getting things right. In the session I did previously, I talked about relationships, and I talked about the 4 stages that we often all go through. We generally begin with a category that I call, or stage that I call, unmarried. If we choose to, we transition to the married category. Unfortunately, sometimes we find ourselves in the divorced category, and painfully, the final category is the widowed category. The first 3 are based on choices we make. The final is something we don't really get to choose. The cards are dealt and we play. I'm going to speak to the first 3 groups. My focus, however, is on the 3rd group, the divorced category. Irrespective of that category, whether you are unmarried and not looking, unmarried but in a relationship, or whether you are married, or whether you are looking to separate, however you define your relationship, I think this might be very useful. I made reference to something in the session that I did previously, and I should restate that reference. If there are 2 people out there, a man and a woman, or a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, whatever combination it could be, if there are no kids involved, I think it's your life to lead, and I think you can decide for yourself. When kids are in the picture, I think there are certain decisions that should be made more thoughtfully. Hence my topic, thinking things through, and therefore getting things right. So I will give you some ideas, what I call thought triggers, to help in that process of you deciding what the best decision could be for you. I hope the ideas I share are seen as, and do come across as, helpful. I really do. Now, let's just assume, in this particular instance, I'm going to use 2 avatars, 2 people, a lady and a man, married with kids. And using this avatar enables me to direct my conversation in the right manner. Once there are kids involved, the decisions we make have to be carefully considered. Now think about this carefully. Most of us will spend about 5 years going through college. In that period, if you imagine that there are 365 days in a year, if you multiply 365 by 5, you're looking at something in the region of about 1,800, 1,700 days we dedicate to getting a certificate that says we have gone through a process of learning, and therefore we understand the theory and we've passed or we've failed, whichever. There are 24 hours every day. If you multiply 24 by 1,800, what you get is the total number of hours spent over the entire duration of a 5-year learning process. Sometimes that could amount to almost 40,000 hours. We go through that process. Now sometimes that 5 years is extended to 6. Why? Because we fail a particular subject or a course. We don't do well in a module, we have to retake the module, so we spend an extra year. We do all of that simply because we want to be successful. We want the best possibility and the best opportunity for a successful life, whatever that might be. At the time we start the journey, we don't know what the future would be. But what we are trying to do is find skills and tools to enable us perform in the game of life in the future, and to ensure that we achieve our dreams and our goals. Remember, at the point in time, we don't know what those dreams and goals we have an idea. Most people start off thinking, I want to be a doctor. They end up becoming, maybe, who knows, maybe physiotherapists. Why? Because they finish the course and the training, and they realize that their passion lies in a different place. In any case, the knowledge they've learned, they take some of that knowledge and they're able to leverage that knowledge in their new job or career or profession. Now, the reason I've explained this is so you can understand how much we are willing and how much we're willing to sacrifice, what we're willing to give, what we're willing to give up, just to have the skills and tools that can ensure that our life is more meaningful. I have found from my interactions with people, both people who are in relationships in my life and people whose relationships I've critiqued, I have found that we are seldom willing to invest a fraction of the time it takes or the time it took to acquire a degree. We are reluctant to invest a slender portion of all of that time into making sure our relationships work. So let's assume you're a man and you're in a relationship with a woman and there are kids involved, and both of you have decided, for whatever reason, no judgment, no heat, for whatever reason, to go your separate ways. My first question is always, have you done whatever it takes to make sure that you're not making a mistake? And perhaps I shouldn't use the word mistake, because it invokes the emotion of fear, as though you're making the wrong decision. I would simply say, and I apologize for using that word, and let me just rephrase it and simply say, have you sought for the right level of help? I'm going to give you a few. I hope you take this to heart. And number one, get professional advice and support. And by profession, I'm speaking about people who are trained legally, trained in a professional setting, whether those be psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, therapists, but people who have been trained to understand both how the emotions and the mind works and how intellect works, but can also understand the challenges we go through as human beings. Professionals. I started with professionals because that's what most people would relate to. I have a concern, however, that if you were to look at most of the professional we have in any of those career fields that I have just mentioned, I tend to find that most people are doing just as badly as you are in their relationships and in their family situations. It's similar to having a doctor who is overweight and trying to tell you about how to stay healthy. So seek that information, because knowledge is knowledge and wisdom is wisdom. The person might have the right knowledge and understanding but lack in application to themselves, but the knowledge is still there. My second recommendation is to seek some form of a faith-based support. Let me go into details here. This country is a great country. The country was built based on the Judeo-Christian values. We've since left those value systems, so much so that we do not like to talk about them. Whether you believe in a deity or you don't, in addition to the professional support you're looking to get, it's important for you to be drawn to or get around a faith-based community, whether that be a religion, preferably, but it doesn't have to be a defined religion. It could be a combination of multiple religions. Look around where you live, look for faith-based communities, and go to them and ask if you could speak to them about the challenges you're facing. My observation has been, and the data supports this, interestingly, this is the data from the United States and the United Kingdom. Those who are in a faith-based community have a lower probability of getting a divorce. And the more you have around you, that community reinforces the need for you to seek help, talk to the elders, and talk to the members of your community. The number is about 28%. The probability of divorce decreases by about 28% if you are in a faith-based community, irrespective of religion. And the reason I've suggested this is because there is often, depending on where you are in life and who you are, there's a possibility that you've subscribed to the modern approach to relationships. If you live in the West, if you live in Great Britain or the United Kingdom, the likelihood that this is the case, providing you were born after 1960, is probably 95%. We have let go of the traditional values that we once had. The problem with the modern aspect to dating and relationships is that it's all about the progressive idea, and it's all about the liberal idea. Unfortunately, it's more of a theory, and we're finding out that that experiment is ending very badly. The faith-based community has a way of providing you with some support at the foundational level by reminding you of what it means to be in a relationship, what it means to be married, what it means to commit to someone, what your vows are supposed to imply. By doing that, they're not necessarily, putting you on a cross and crucifying you to that stick. What they're trying to do, what they should do, is give you a perspective about forgiveness, about love, about companionship, about duty, obligation, honor, about life, about the family structure, about the importance of having people other than your friends and loved ones who can intercede for you, people who can either pray on your behalf or people who can listen to you when you need help. I tend to find most people are stuck, I would say, in a maze. They are going through things that they cannot solve themselves. But the issue is, they're not too comfortable sharing it with family for fear of being criticized, or friends for fear of being criticized or judged too harshly. Whereas a neutral person, someone from a faith-based community, depending on the faith-based community, they usually come from a place of love. They may not have the same faith as you. You may not even believe in what they believe, but you have the opportunity to speak to someone who is going to be very discreet with your challenges, discreet with your information, and therefore try to help without fear of rejection, you rejecting them. Plus, you can have no fear of actually placing the relationship at risk. I tend to find, in my experience, friends seldom tell each other the truth for fear that the relationship might be risked. Most people will rather maintain the relationship they have with you rather than tell you the truth. So, 2 advices in terms of getting help. Get professional help and find a faith-based community and talk to someone. Number 3 is you need a life coach. You need a mentor. I talk about this regularly. The reference I use is, it's a simple one. Your family and your friends are those who love you just the way you are, and they will love you no matter who and what you become. A mentor, a coach, is one who likes you too much to leave you the way you are. In other words, hell on earth from a mentor's perspective will be for you to see the person or meet the person that you could have been in life. A mentor simply says, no, you have a potential. Your potential is being sabotaged by your actual self in the present. And I'm not going to allow you to sabotage your future based on how you feel today. So here is what you need to go from A to B. Go through the pain and the sacrifice so that you can transcend into the person that you could become. Professional help, faith-based community, and some form of help either by a life coach or a mentor. Now, the reason I went through the process of explaining at the start how much time we invest in our education is to simply illustrate that here's a good example, over a 6-month period, let's say you're having serious issues relationally, and you decided to see someone once a week, that'll be 4 times every month. Over a 6-month period, that is 24 hours, based on a 1-hour session each time. 24 hours is all you've invested. Your time and your emotions to try and find a solution, to make life more meaningful. Now, this does not necessarily mean that you will remain in the same relationship, but it's simply to give you a perspective so that you can solve a problem. Most people, and here's the key part of seeking help, we have problems in our lives. We are seeking solutions. The problem is we cannot articulate the problem clearly enough for people who are skilled to give us ideas on how we can solve the problem. In other words, give you a solution. That's the first. The second part is we have a problem, but our best thinking got us into that problem. But we are trying to solve the problem with the same head and intellect that got us into the same problem. Now, Albert Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem at the same level that created the problem. So the purpose of seeking help is so that you move from a level of consciousness to a higher level. A higher level comes in various forms. At the emotional or intellectual level, professionals help, because these are people who are skilled and they can be objective and they can be emotionally separated from your experience and they can tell you what they see by probing and asking questions. Faith-based goes even beyond the emotional and goes perhaps sometimes to the spiritual, where they're trying to, whether you believe or not, trying to use a philosophy about their belief system to bring to your understanding how you can transcend your current self and you can move into who you could be. A coach applies what I consider to be sometimes on the physical plane, on the physical level, where they simply say, listen, I understand how you feel emotionally. I might even understand how you feel spiritually. But the question is, what is real? You need to make good decisions. And if you do ABC, you will get X, Y, Z. If you don't do ABC, you will also get, say, H, J, and M. Make a choice. So that's the first part. Get help. The second part is that you need inspiration. Inspiration comes from being around people whose lives you either admire or people whose lives you could see yourself leading. In the UK, we do not celebrate relationships as much as we should. We celebrate being unmarried and being single, being independent and being free. We do not celebrate the discipline that comes with a relationship, structure, boundary enforcement. We do not understand duty, obligation, and honor. So most relationships are considered to be restrictive, like prisons. That's the way we picture relationships. So the moment we find a problem in our relationships, our natural instinct is to run and to find freedom. The more you share that, the more and the higher the possibility that you'll be looking for a way out of a relationship rather than simply say, no, what is it about me? What is it about me that I need to change? If you have kids, it's important you might understand this concept. You do not simply eliminate any form of threat by virtue of making sure the child is safe. Instead, what you try to do from an early age is recreate moderated versions of what the real world could look like. So you provide initially guardrails so that the child does not fall or injure themselves by going down a path that perhaps, because they haven't developed the ability to think, they don't realize that there's a change in level, like a staircase. So you put protective measures and simply say you can walk around, you can crawl around this area, but you can't go that way. As the child develops, we start to open and extend those guardrails. Why? Because you can't keep the child as a child. You have to let them develop into adults, because the real world is not going to always be forgiving and protective. Relationships are the same way. Get the help you need, then find people who inspire you. And let me be very specific. This has to be people who have been either married for a long time, who can talk about their relationships. So you can understand that sometimes the challenge and the struggle you're going through is not isolated to you alone. You're not the first person. You can listen to someone who has either been married for a long time, people who ideally 50s, 60s, 70s and above, who can share their life stories and who can explain to you how important it is to have someone by their side. By listening to people who have gone much further than you can draw hope from their experiences. There's a research that was done. The data proves this. The more friends you have who have been divorced, the higher the likelihood that you will be divorced. Number two, if your parents, if one of two of you have come from a broken or a divorced parent, the likelihood that you will get divorced is higher. If both parents of yours were divorced, the likelihood of that you will be divorced even increases. The point being that we are products of our environment, and whatever consumes your thoughts controls your life. And the key question is, who am I around? What are they doing to me? What are they saying to me? How are they influencing me in a subtle way? And is that going to enable me to achieve my dreams and goals? You need to be inspired by the right people. So get around people who have lived the life that you wish you had, and just listen to them and let them pour into you, and so that you can get a sense of what is important and what is trivial. My experience has been that a lot of the time our battles have no rewards, and most of the battles we choose are battles with people we love, and we cause so much damage and harm simply because we do not know any better. By being around people who've been married for a long time, you get a sense of humility and grace. You get to see tolerance. You tend to see attentiveness, adaptability. You tend to see people who have not been too rigid about life. But more importantly, you tend to see people who are just grateful to have companions around them. This country is not built for people who are 60, 50, and who are single or unmarried. We're not designed for that way. Life is all about relationships and the emotions we generate, positive emotions we generate from the people we care and love. So you might be in your 30s or your 40s or your 20s. And yes, the feeling is always that you can live a better life and the grass is greener on the other side, and therefore it doesn't matter. As soon as you jump to the other side, you will find your happiness. It doesn't always end that way for most people. It's important to get around people who can show that you were never promised. None of us was promised happiness. What we were promised was an adventure. As a matter of fact, what we were given was the opportunity to have an adventure. We make that adventure into whatever we wish. And the idea that in the West, that we can go through life thinking that we can do this alone, I think is quite fanciful. A week or so ago, I had a conversation with someone, and I made reference to a conversation that took place. And I said, this is a first world problem. And the people around the table looked at me as though I had said something that was not to have been said. And I explained, I said, listen, Abraham Maslow, if you want to understand human beings and our motivations, look at our behaviors. Our motivations determine our behaviors, and our behaviors reinforce our motivations. Abraham Maslow came up with something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Very important, very basic. And it's simply stated, at the basic level, we have a physiological needs. Need for food and the need for shelter and some form of security. We move to the next level, safety. Well, safety and security go hand in hand. The need for some form of, you might say, something to sustain you, because security can come from protection or it can come from provision. But at the bottom, you have physiological needs, then you have safety needs, then you have love and belonging, wanting to be part of a group, a community, to feel loved, to love other people, to have a sense of belonging. Above that, you have what we call self-esteem, our self-concept, self-identity, self-image, how we see ourselves, our feelings, and then finally, what we call self-actualization. And this is where we start entertaining things such as, what is my purpose in life? What is the meaning of life? The pursuit of the transcendental. If you understand that pyramid, and that pyramid starts from the bottom and it moves towards the top, self-actualization. If you can keep life simple, the more you achieve or move towards self-actualization, the more you sabotage the life you currently have. Because what it simply means is that the things that mattered initially no longer matter. And you're now seeking a blissful happiness, a blissful experience. Unfortunately, there's a possibility that you push away people who have been with you during the early stages of your physiological needs being met, or the safety needs being met, or the belonging needs, because you've reached a state of self-esteem and head into a self-actualization. Most of the relationships that fail begin from the place above love and belonging and self-esteem. That's where the issues start to come, and self-actualization. It's a biological instinct. Our motivation is biologically leveraged. If all you care about, or if all you're forced to care about, is your safety, then that's all you see. If all you have to care about is your security, your focus is not on how you feel. But once you've gone past the physiological needs and your security and safety needs, and you've gone past your sense of community, because you are part of a community, and you're now talking about how you feel and not having happiness in the relationship, or self-actualization, or believing that you've now separated from each other because your purpose and the pursuit of life and the meaning of your lives have diverged. That's when you have a risk that you will self-sabotage your relationships. Now, let me give you a good example from my experience. I found that all of my problems in life, every time I have had issues in my life, it always stemmed from a good idea that I had. Think about that carefully. All of my problems always began, usually, as a good idea. The reality turned out to be different to the theory. I always started with a theory that this could be good. I pursued it, and I found that over time, having sacrificed my energy, resources, my time, I found that though a good idea at the start, it was a horrible reality. In the same way, as you're thinking about your relationship, recognize that some of the ideas that are being planted in your head and in your subconscious mind by yourself, by third voices, they always come across as good ideas. But the reality, when the seed is planted and when the harvest comes, you find that the harvest is nothing compared to what you thought it would be. Now, the reason I state this is to simply say the purpose of getting help and getting inspiration from people who have lived life is so you have a way of calibrating what you think could happen versus what could actually happen. Now, I'm going to add as part of the inspiration recommendation is it's not unusual for people to find other voices of reason that reinforce their beliefs. So, usually most people are looking for opportunities to reinforce their pre-existing beliefs and prejudices and positions. I would recommend you find people who think differently to you, who can argue against your conclusions. And the purpose of that is to give you the opportunity to listen to the voice of reason. That's how we come to conclusions. The good conclusions are those where we get the left side of the ledger and the right side of the ledger, and both sides have been argued thoroughly, and we place them next to each other, and we take the net of both sides. In other words, it's combined, and some will cancel each other, and finally we have at the bottom the net. The net could be negative, the net could be positive. But if you're arguing just from one side, for example, in this case, you're in a relationship where you've had it. He's not responsive, not romantic, doesn't meet your needs sexually, is not motivated as a person, it's like another child. You can list all of the reasons why everything is wrong about him or the relationship. But if you haven't argued on the other side as to what is beneficial about the relationship, and if you then stop yourself from placing those two arguments, the left is valid, however you define it, but there is a right that is also valid. You have to get someone to help you find it. Because sometimes it's hard to make the argument unemotionally. So you need people who can remind you of the value. Now, I've said in many of my sessions, in the West, we've trivialized the value of men, so much so that most men cannot articulate. We do a poor job in articulating what we bring to a relationship and the benefits of we being in a relationship. Women have done a great job and are usually quite good at voicing all of the great things that they've accomplished and what they bring to a relationship. Most women have been raised in the West not to honor or understand the value of a man. So once you take away provision and protection, remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we go straight into belonging and love and self-esteem. And most women will say today, well, I don't care about my physiological needs because I can provide that myself. I don't care about my safety needs because we have civilized and created a society where we have relative peace. We don't have foreign invaders or internal invaders. So I already have my clique, I have my group of friends, and therefore I feel as though I belong to a community. Therefore, all I care about is how I feel, my self-esteem and self-actualization. So I do not need a man. If he's not going to step up to the table, if he's going to continue to act like a child, then I do not need him in my life. And men have not, over the past 70 years, we're not taught how to verbalize or communicate why our presence, though considered to be nothing, is worth so much. Now you can make the argument vice versa. And most men today don't understand or see the value of women in a relationship. So they mistreat women, they don't listen, they don't communicate properly, they don't understand, they don't empathize. And here is the dilemma. Every one of us has something that we are hiding, a mask. Sometimes it's anger, but that anger is not necessarily the actual issue. There's a vulnerability in each and every one of us that we are concealing. And what you have to do is allow each other the opportunity to allow that vulnerable side to come to the table. In other words, the need to feel heard. The need to feel heard without fear of criticism. Now here is a big dilemma. Naturally speaking, we loathe criticism. And once we feel we have been criticized, we also feel that we have been rejected. There's a biological instinct to this and a social instinct to this. Because back in the day, those who criticized you were often those who were on the other side. And therefore, we did one of two things. We either eliminated those who criticized us because we feared that they knew something about us that would be used. And I'm going back to the hunter-gatherer days, that would be used to either provide or cause pain or death to us. So we either fled or we reversed, and therefore we took them out of the picture. So it's not unusual to find that when you criticize, whether that criticism has come from a good place, people feel rejected and we become very defensive. The more that happens, the more you build this monumental, emotional monster that continues to shelter themselves and lock down any form of vulnerability. Why? We don't feel heard. So get around people who can inspire you into communicating clearly. But more importantly, get around people who can be contrarians, who can tell you about the opposite side of the ledger. So you can understand that perhaps nothing is ever as it first appears. Now I'm going to end today's session by talking about risks. And perhaps I will not have time to go into the detail of this. I'll have to do it in a different session. But let me share some thoughts that perhaps are necessary. If you have kids, I'm going to paint a picture. And I'm going to paint a picture that that would create an emotive response. A husband and a wife looking to get divorced, have 2 kids or have 3 kids. 2 of them are girls, 1 of them is a boy. The first risk, and this is where we make a mistake, the mother wants a divorce, the father wants a divorce. They both love their kids. But the first risk as a result of the separation is the kids. Now, here's what's sad. You cannot place your needs first, your emotional, heartfelt needs, and the needs of the kids first at the same time. You can't have 2 needs occupying the same space. One has to dominate and the other has to submit. If you place the needs of the kids first, you'll be thinking, usually, in the right chain. If you place your needs first, there's a possibility you will self-sabotage the safety of your kids. Now let me expand this further so you can understand. Women who have had kids and who are about to go through a separation need to come to the reality that when they say, well, I'm looking for love, I'm looking for a new relationship, no, you are simply looking and hoping to audition for someone else who will be a stepfather to your children. When you place it in that context, it enables the heart and the head to understand the dilemma. You might think, no, well, my children have a father. The father are available, and he will always be available. Yes, I get that. But you're looking for a stepfather. In addition to being a lover to you, he will be a stepfather should you decide to consummate the relationship. He will become a stepfather to your children. And therein lies the dilemma. Are you auditioning him in the right way for a stepfather? Because the way this should work is you should be auditioning him for a lover, which women will do, but fail to audition him in the role of a stepfather. Most men will fail that test because we can be great lovers, but terrible stepfathers. The reason I talk about the risk to the children is, think about this for a second. You love your kids, but there's a possibility you will not forgive yourself if you were to bring into your life and into your family and into your home an outsider who does something to your kids for which you find it hard to forgive yourself. Again, my intention is not to cause you to be in a fearful state, but is to raise your consciousness to understand that all that glitters is not gold. The one thing you can guarantee, I hope so, is that your husband or your partner or your ex-partner will not harm the kids. Or put it in a different way, you already know the devil. The angel on the other side, who has no history with the kids, is one you do not know. So the key risk here is actually how much exposure that person who is coming into your life, or coming into, whether you're the lady or she is the lady, that exposure to the kids, what effect would it be? Now, if you notice, I said you're looking for a stepfather if you are a woman. This is a double standard that then applies in relationships that benefits men. A woman knows for a fact that a child is hers because you bring it to term. You carry that child and you birth the child. A man usually knows or assumes. If he has a DNA test done, he knows it's his. But there is almost no, the seed is released and that's it, we're done. For you, the seed is released in you, it germinates, it starts to grow. So you go through the development process on a day-by-day basis until the child is birthed. And even after the child is birthed, you have to feed. So there's this connection on a biological, emotional, mental, spiritual level between a mother and a child. It's not quite the same within a father and a child. So a man who is in a relationship looking to find a new girlfriend doesn't have the same obligation as a mother who has a child. He is going out there and is looking for a partner or a wife. He's not looking for a stepmother to the same extent that the woman is looking for a stepfather. Part of the reason has to do with the laws we have in society. Most of the time, in 90% of the cases, the mother retains custody of the children, so she keeps the children. So A new man is coming into a formed family, whereas most men who have been fathers who were divorced or who separated, in only less than 10% of the occasions do they keep primary custody. So the man usually comes to the table without the kids in the picture. Now, she might know, the new girl might know that he has children, but the woman who is the new woman understands that the children are with the mother. So there's less burden on him in explaining that what he's looking for is a stepmother. As a matter of fact, what tends to happen is that the mother, the biological mother, ideally does not want to even entertain the idea of a stepmother, which the new girlfriend actually tends to enjoy and prefers. The children are with the mother, we have them every now and then, but we are forming a new unit. Now, this is an important statement that I have made. The difference between two sides and how women who are going through a separation have to understand how to vet the men. You vet with your head, you vet with your heart. You're looking for a lover, but you're also auditioning for a stepfather. The man, on the other hand, is looking for a lover. He is not always auditioning for a stepmother. And here is what's interesting. Women are more of the social of the two groups. Men, generally speaking, do not want to be stepfathers. Women, on the other hand, do not mind being stepfathers if they've found the right man. So there's a double standard that plays that has to be taken into a greater perspective when you're making your decision. Careful analysis is key. Now, in addition to the risk to the children by exposure, there's also the lifetime effect on the kids. The fact that the kids go through the emotional separation with their fathers or mothers and then go through the forceful bonding with another man or another woman, which causes tensions, which has long-lasting implications. I'm going to do a session where I talk about stepfathers. I think it's going to be very controversial, but I think if women understood and if men understood the risks of being a stepfather, they would run. The moment you meet a woman and she says, I have a child, and she says, I have a daughter, my recommendation to most men is run. I mean, run. It doesn't matter what age she is. Between 0 and 18, the risks are just too high. She might be 3-4 years old now, but all she has to do these days with social media is complain that her stepfather behaved in a certain way or looked at her in a certain way, and it's just too messy. If she's approaching puberty, it gets worse. If she's approaching 18, it gets worse. It's not his child. There's just so much rife and incest and all that nonsense that my recommendation is be very, very careful. If the child is a boy, it's just as bad. The competition, the rivalry that takes place, there is no honor, respect. There is no benefit to being a stepfather. There is none. But that's not today's conversation. That's a conversation for another time. And so let me conclude today's session by just simply saying, go through those 3 steps that I've given you. Number 1, get help. Number 2, get inspiration. Get around people who can give you a different perspective about life and assess the risks. I'll leave you with a solution. Because if you've listened so far, this would seem as though the woman is carrying the heavy burden. And unfortunately, she is. Here's a solution. If you are a woman and you've decided, I want out. If you have primary custody, give full custody to the children's father. Let him go and start a new family, and you're free. And then you have visitation rights, and you can have arrangements where you pay child support, but you can start your family completely. You can go find someone who is a lover, and you can build a family together with a new man. The children can be with their fathers. There are several reasons why this is better. Children raised by single fathers do much better on every single metric than children who are raised by single mothers. The data is conclusive. Don't argue. Don't write to me and tell me how wrong I am. As a matter of fact, if you look at the West today, or any part of the Anglosphere, the messy aspect of what we have in society has come as a result of people who did not believe my initial assertion. Single fathers make better parents and produce better offsprings than single mothers do. Part of the reason for that, just in case you're wondering, is under the fathers, they are not raised purely based on empathy, which empathy, this is a mistake people don't understand. A mother who has empathy and who shares empathy with their children does not automatically mean that the children will grow up to be empathetic as human beings. As a matter of fact, it creates the opposite. Too much empathy creates narcissism in children, whereas fathers tend to have strict boundary enforcement, delayed gratification, rough and tumble play, discipline, not just boundary enforcement, but boundary setting and enforcement. And that creates a more rounded individual. Here's the key thing. The common denominator of success, the key part of what makes people successful, is the word delayed gratification. Academic success is based on your ability to read and write, but life success is based on delayed gratification. Fathers provide more delayed gratification as a result of discipline, structure, boundary enforcement and setting, rough and tumble play, and even create children that have more empathy. This is mind-blowing. Fathers create children that have more empathy than single mothers create children that have empathy. The data on this is conclusive. And this data goes back as 30, 40 years. Now, most women will reject that notion, but it doesn't matter. The point I'm making is a simple one. As a woman, if you've come to the conclusion that you want separation, think through these three issues and take into account this final solution. If you are a man who you've come to the conclusion that you want separation, think about the children and think through these three issues and consider the one solution. Ask for you to take over full custody of the children so that both parties have an equal opportunity for perhaps happiness, fulfillment, but more importantly, so the children have the best chance, the best shot at a more successful life. Now, I hope that's been useful.